Chapter 1. Homecoming Shadows. The plane wheels kissed the runway with a jolt, and the familiar voice of the pilot crackled through the speakers. "Welcome home, ladies and gentlemen." Staff Sergeant Daniel Burns let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. 15 months in Afghanistan had felt like a lifetime. Sandstorms, firefights, nights under a sky littered with tracer fire. But none of that had left him more anxious than this moment. He wasn't stepping onto foreign soil anymore. He was stepping back into his life. He thought about Emma, 7 years old, with chestnut hair that curled at the ends like her mother's used to when he first met her. She had been just 5 the last time he saw her, hugging his waist in the airport, crying into his fatigues, her voice muffled but clear enough. "Don't forget me, Daddy." He never had. As the passengers disembarked, Daniel slung his duffel bag over his shoulder and scanned the waiting crowd beyond security. Families surged forward, wives throwing themselves into husbands' arms, kids clinging to fathers they barely remembered, friends holding up homemade signs. Daniel's eyes searched desperately for a small figure with a gap-toothed grin, maybe holding a crooked poster that said, "Welcome home, Daddy." But the crowd thinned, and no one came. A hollow feeling spread through his chest. Mara had promised to be there. Emma too. He clenched his jaw, forced a breath through his nose, and pushed his way outside. Maybe the car broke down. Maybe Mara got caught in traffic. Maybe he shook his head. "Don't go there, Burns. Don't." The cab ride home was quiet. The driver tried small talk, asked about the deployment, the heat, the chow, but Daniel barely responded. His mind was elsewhere, pulling at threads of unease. When the taxi pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same from the outside. A little paint peeling off the shutters, the lawn overgrown but not wild. Ordinary. Comforting almost. But when he stepped out and walked up to the front door, his boots crunching against the gravel, something fell off. The curtains in the front window hung crooked. The porch light, once reliable, was shattered. He turned the knob. The door wasn't locked. Daniel's instinct screamed. 15 months in a combat zone had carved habits deep into his bones, and the looseness of that knob told him all was not right. He pushed the door open. The smell hit first. Rot. Mold. A sour stench that belonged in an alley dumpster, not a family home. Inside, the living room was a wreck. Empty beer bottles on the table. Takeout cartons stacked in corners. A couch cushion slashed open, stuffing spilling like entrails. The TV flickered on mute, some late-night rerun playing though it was barely past noon. "Mara," Daniel called, his voice low but commanding. "Emma." No answer. His boots echoed as he stepped deeper inside. His duffel slid off his shoulder onto the floor with a heavy thud. He moved room to room. Kitchen, filthy, dishes crusted with mold. Bedroom, unmade, a man's clothes tossed carelessly in a pile. And then a sound. Small, weak, a whimper. Daniel froze, his heartbeat surging into his ears. He turned slowly toward the hallway leading to the back porch. The sound came again, fragile and desperate. "Daddy!" Daniel's blood ran cold. He followed the voice. Each step felt heavier, like wading through quicksand. He pushed open the back door. There, in the corner of the porch, sat a rusted wire dog kennel. Inside, curled up like some unwanted animal, was Emma, her tiny arms wrapped around her knees, her face streaked with tears and dirt, her skin peppered with angry red mosquito bites. "Daddy," she whispered again, her voice trembling with a mixture of relief and terror. For a heartbeat, Daniel couldn't move. The world tilted. The war he thought he'd left behind came roaring back inside him. But this battlefield was his own home. "Emma." He dropped to his knees, fumbling with the latch. His hands shook with rage and panic. "Baby girl, I'm here. I'm here." The lock was cheap, rusted, but it stuck. He yanked, cursed, then ripped it open with brute force. The metal screeched, bending under his grip. He pulled her out, clutching her against his chest. She was light, too light. Fragile. He could feel each rib through her shirt. Emma buried her face in his uniform, sobbing. "Daddy, Daddy, I was so hungry." He said, "This is where I belong." Daniel's arms tightened. "No, no, sweetheart. You belong nowhere but here with me. You hear me? With me." Her breath hitched. "Wayne said, Mom's boyfriend said, I'm just a dog. He made me eat from a bowl. Daniel froze. His body went rigid, rage pumping through his veins hotter than any firefight. His jaw locked, so tight his teeth ached. Wayne, Mara's boyfriend. He swallowed hard, keeping his voice steady for Emma's sake. You're not a dog, baby girl. You're my daughter, my everything. And no one will ever hurt you again. She nodded against him, but the tremors in her body betrayed the terror etched into her bones. Daniel stood, carrying her inside. He laid her gently on the couch, brushing hair out of her face. Stay here, pumpkin. Daddy's gonna fix this. But first, we get you help. He dug out his phone. The first number he called was Amara's. Miguel. The voice on the other end was immediate, warm, steady. Burns? Holy hell, you back already? Yeah. Daniel's voice cracked with suppressed fury. I need you. Emma, she's hurt. Bad. Not combat bad, but his throat tightened. She's starving. Malnourished. Covered in bites. I can't take her to the ER. They'll ask too many questions. You're the only one I trust. Silence. Then Miguel's tone hardened. Bring her to me. Now. I'll prep what I need. Thank you. Daniel hung up. He scooped Emma back into his arms. She was too weak to protest, only resting her head against his chest with a sigh. As he walked out the door, he spotted something on the floor, a man's boot, not his, tossed lazily by the doorframe. Wayne's. Daniel's vision tunneled. His pulse thundered. For a split second, he imagined snapping that boot in half, then the man who wore it. Not yet. He forced himself out to the truck, strapping Emma carefully into the passenger seat. Her eyes fluttered open and shut, exhaustion tugging at her small body. Stay with me, baby, Daniel whispered, starting the engine. We're almost there. Miguel's house was a half-hour drive, though to Daniel it felt like years. When they arrived, Miguel was waiting at the door, a medical kit already spread across the table. Bring her in, Miguel said firmly. His eyes softened when he saw Emma's state. Jesus, Danny, what the hell happened? Daniel laid Emma gently on the couch. Her mother's boyfriend happened. Miguel swore under his breath, examining her. He cleaned her bites, checked her pulse, gave her fluids, and scribbled notes. She's dehydrated, malnourished, but she's tough. She'll bounce back with care. He looked up sharply. But this wasn't neglect, brother. This was abuse. Intentional. Who did this? Daniel's hands clenched into fists. A man named Wayne. Mara's new man. Miguel's expression hardened. Then he picked the wrong damn family. Daniel paced, chest tight, fists aching from clenching. He pulled his phone again. But this time, he didn't call the cops. He didn't call child services. He didn't call Mara. He called Colonel Burnett. The old man answered on the second ring. Burns? It's been a while. Sir, Daniel said, voice low, deadly calm. I need your help. This is off the books. My daughter's been hurt. The system already failed her once, and I won't let it happen again. A pause. Then Burnett's gravelly voice came through. Tell me everything. Daniel glanced at Emma, resting weakly but safely now, and his chest swelled with a mix of sorrow and determination. I came home from war to find my little girl in a cage, he said. And I swear on everything I am, I will protect her, no matter what it takes. Chapter 2. The Enemy Revealed. The morning after finding Emma, Daniel barely slept. He sat at Miguel's kitchen table, hands clasped tight, staring at the steam curling up from his untouched coffee. The house was quiet except for Emma's soft breathing from the guest room down the hall. She was safe, at least for now. But the thought gnawed at him. Who the hell was Wayne, really? Mara had never mentioned him in her letters. Not once. For Emma to be left in his hands while Daniel was fighting overseas, it had to mean Wayne had been living in the house for months. Daniel finally pushed back his chair and stood. Miguel raised an eyebrow from across the counter where he was packing supplies into a duffel. You going somewhere? Miguel asked. I'm finding out who this bastard is, Daniel muttered. And when I do, I'll know how to deal with him. Miguel's gaze hardened. Don't go off half-cocked, brother. That girl in there needs you calm. Tactical. Daniel gave a stiff nod. Tactical. Yeah. His first stop was his own house. He parked down the block, approached on foot, and scanned the street like he was clearing an alley in Kandahar. The blinds were drawn. A beat-up Chevy sat in the driveway, one he didn't recognize. He slipped around back, boots silent against the grass. Peering through the kitchen window, he saw dirty dishes still stacked, but no sign of Wayne. Inside, his gut burned. He's out there, somewhere, walking free. Daniel pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Adrian Dodd," came the gruff reply. "Dodd, it's Burns." A pause, then a low chuckle. "Well, hell, Staff Sergeant Burns. Didn't think I'd hear from you again. What's the situation?" "I need a background check," Daniel said. "Name's Wayne Collins. Been shacking up with my wife. He's the one who hurt Emma." His voice broke for half a second before he forced it steady. "I need to know everything. Past charges, known associates, work history." "You dig deep." Dodd's tone sobered. "If you're calling me, it's serious. It's worse than serious. This guy's not just a scumbag stepdad. Something bigger's going on." "All right," Dodd said. "Give me a few hours. I'll call you back." Daniel spent the afternoon combing through what little he could dig up on his own. He hacked through Mara's public social media posts, photos of parties, half-naked selfies, not a single picture of Emma. But Wayne? There he was in the background of almost every shot. Always drinking, always grinning like he owned the place. Daniel scrolled further and froze at a detail most would have missed. A tattoo inked across Wayne's forearm. Black ink, jagged, resembling a snake wrapped around a broken chain. Daniel had seen it before. Back in Afghanistan, one of their prisoners had the same mark burned into his skin. The intel guys told Daniel it was linked to a stateside gang with ties to weapons running, and darker things no one wanted to write in official reports. His stomach dropped. Wayne wasn't just some loser. By dusk, Doc called back. His tone was clipped, serious. "You were right to dig, Burns. Wayne Collins is poison. Records sealed in 2 counties, but I pulled enough to see the pattern. Assault charges dropped mysteriously. 2 separate complaints of child endangerment. Never went to trial. Always walked free." Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. "Ow! Friends in low places," Dodd replied. "Here's the kicker. He's connected to a string of missing children cases in Fayetteville and Jacksonville. Nothing pinned to him directly, but the timing matches deployments. Soldiers leave, kids vanish, and Wayne's name floats around the edges." Daniel's breath went ragged. "Are you saying this bastard's part of something organized?" "That's exactly what I'm saying." Dodd hesitated. "Ever heard of rotation houses?" Daniel frowned. "No, they're safe houses, but not for safety. These networks move kids around every few weeks. Keeps cops guessing, keeps families desperate. Collins has ties to at least 3 addresses flagged in my files. He's not working alone." Daniel's chest felt like it was caving in. He pictured Emma's little face, those mosquito bites, the way she whispered, "Daddy, I'm just a dog." It wasn't random. It was calculated. Dodd lowered his voice. "Burns, I've been on the force 15 years. I've seen bad men. But this is a machine. Predators targeting military families because they know the soldiers won't be around to protect their kids. It's systematic." Daniel's knuckles whitened. "And Wayne put his hands on my daughter." A long silence stretched. Then Dodd said quietly, "You planning to go by the book on this?" Daniel looked out at the street, jaw set. "I haven't decided yet." "Fair warning," Dodd said. "You keep digging, Collins will know. Men like him, they don't go down easy. And if he feels threatened," Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Let him feel threatened." Later that night, Daniel parked outside one of the addresses Dodd had given him. A 2-story house, windows dark, backyard fenced high. From the outside, it looked ordinary. But Daniel knew better. He crouched in the shadows, watching. An SUV pulled up around midnight. A man got out, glanced around nervously, then led a child, maybe 6 years old, up the steps. The kid's small hand was gripped tight, the little body stiff with fear. Daniel's fists clenched. Every instinct screamed to move, to act. But he forced himself to stay still, memorizing details. License plate, the man's face, the way the door opened with a coded knock. He pulled back before dawn, heart pounding. The world around him was darker than he had ever imagined. When Daniel got back to Miguel's, Emma was awake, curled on the couch watching cartoons. She looked up at him with big, tired eyes. "Daddy, you're back." He forced a smile, kneeling beside her. "Always, pumpkin. Always." She reached out, touching his sleeve. "You're not leaving again, are you?" His throat tightened. "No, baby girl. I'm not leaving you. Ever again." But inside, he knew this wasn't over. That evening, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Burns," he said. A low, mocking voice answered. "You've been busy." Daniel froze. "Wayne." "That's right." The man sneered. "You think you're clever? Digging around, calling your little detective friend? I know everything you're doing." Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. "You stay away from Emma. If you come near her again." Wayne cut him off, his tone shifting to ice. "You don't get it, soldier boy. You dig too deep, and your daughter pays the price. You think what I did to her is bad? That was nothing. Keep pushing, and she won't live to see her next birthday." Daniel's vision blurred red. His voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "If you so much as breathe in her direction again, I will end you." Wayne chuckled darkly. "Big talk. But you're just one man. And we're everywhere. Remember that." The line went dead. Daniel stood in the middle of the kitchen, the silence ringing in his ears. He looked toward the hallway where Emma slept, safe for now. His jaw tightened, his body trembling with rage and purpose. Wayne wasn't just a mistake. He was part of something monstrous, and now it had a face. Chapter 3, The Gathering Storm. The morning after Wayne's threat, Daniel stared at his reflection in Miguel's bathroom mirror. His face was harder than when he left for Afghanistan. More scars, deeper lines, but his eyes carried something new. Not the weariness of war. This was different. It was personal. Emma's words replayed in his head like a broken tape. He said I was a dog. Daniel gripped the sink until his knuckles whitened. He wasn't going to wait for the system. Not anymore. The enemy wasn't halfway across the world this time. It was right here in his backyard. When he stepped into the kitchen, Miguel was already there, brewing coffee. His friend studied him with a wary look of someone who'd been up half the night preparing for what he knew was coming. "You made your choice," Miguel said flatly. Daniel nodded once. "I won't stop." Miguel slid a steaming mug across the counter. "Then you're not doing it alone." The first recruit came that afternoon. Damon Freeman. Daniel had served with Damon years ago. They'd lost touch, but Daniel remembered the man's grit. Damon had left the army after his son vanished 3 years earlier. The case was ruled a runaway, but Daniel knew better now. They met in a quiet diner off the highway. Damon walked in, tall and lean, his eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. "Burns." His voice was rough, but there was a flicker of relief at seeing a familiar face. "Heard you were back." Daniel stood, shook his hand firmly. "Good to see you, brother. Sit." When the waitress left their coffees, Daniel leaned in. "I'm going to cut straight to it. Your boy, Ethan. I know what happened wasn't random. I've seen the same hands on my own daughter." Damon's grip tightened on his mug. His eyes narrowed. "Go on." Daniel lowered his voice. "They call it network. They target military families while we're deployed. I found Emma locked in a cage. Starved. Beaten down. I got proof they're connected to missing kids, including Ethan." For a moment, Damon just stared, his jaw flexing. Then he slammed his fist against the table hard enough to rattle the cups. "I knew it." His voice shook with rage. "Cops told me I was crazy. My ex-wife said I was obsessed. But I knew someone took him. You telling me this network has my boy?" Daniel nodded slowly. "There's a chance. I can't promise. But I'm going after them." Damon leaned forward, eyes burning. "Then I'm with you. Whatever it takes." The second recruit was harder. Tammy Courtney. Her 2 daughters had been taken 6 months earlier. Authorities claimed she was an unfit mother, manipulated by a fake social worker who recommended foster placement. The kids never made it to the system. They vanished. Daniel and Miguel found her in a rundown apartment building on the edge of town. She opened the door cautiously, eyes swollen from crying, hair tied back hastily. "Mrs. Courtney?" Daniel asked gently. She frowned. "Do I know you?" "No," Daniel admitted. "But I know about your girls. I know who took them." The door nearly shut in his face until Miguel stepped forward. "We're not here to hurt you. We're here because the same people hurt his daughter. We're fighting back." Tammy froze, searching their faces for lies. "You're military." Daniel nodded. "And I've seen the enemy. They don't wear uniforms, but they're just as organized. You've been fighting alone. You don't have to anymore." Her lips trembled. Do you think they're still alive?" Daniel placed a steady hand on the doorframe. Yes, I do, and I need your help to find them. She hesitated only a moment before opening the door wide. Inside, her walls were covered in pinned articles, photos, and scribbled notes. She'd been building her own investigation. You've been busy, Miguel muttered, scanning the chaos. Tammy's eyes flickered with a mix of shame and pride. It's all I have left. Daniel studied the mess. Then you're already one of us. That night, the four of them gathered in Miguel's garage. Daniel laid out a map on a workbench, pinning photos and addresses Dodd had provided. Here, Daniel said, tapping the paper. Rotation houses. 3 confirmed. And here, possible drop sites. Warehouses. Backroads motels. Damon leaned forward. You think Wayne's just a middleman? Daniel nodded grimly. He answers to someone higher. A man named Owen Branch, ex-military contractor, dishonorably discharged for brutality in Iraq. Since then, he's been running operations stateside, black market arms, human trafficking, and now this. Tammy swallowed hard. He's the one who has my girls? Daniel met her eyes. Most likely, Miguel added. Branch isn't just some thug. He's connected, organized crime, dirty contractors, maybe even corrupt officials. Taking him down won't be simple. Damon's hand curled into a fist. Good. I don't want simple. I want justice. Daniel studied his team, the medic, the grieving father, the desperate mother. None of them soldiers anymore, but all of them fighters. Then we move smart, Daniel said. Step 1, Emma. She has to disappear until this is done. The next morning, Daniel drove Emma out to a safe house, a cabin tucked deep in the Carolina woods, owned by Colonel Burnett. The retired officer greeted them on the porch, arms crossed, his frame still broad despite age. You weren't kidding on the phone, Burnett said, looking Daniel over. Then his gaze softened as he looked at Emma, who clung to Daniel's hand. She looks just like her mother did at that age. Daniel stiffened. She's nothing like Mara. Burnett nodded once. Fair enough. Emma looked up at Daniel, fear in her eyes. Daddy, do I have to stay here? Daniel crouched, cupping her face. Only for a little while, Pumpkin. You'll be safe here. Colonel Burnett's a good man. He'll protect you. Her lower lip trembled. You promise you'll come back? Daniel kissed her forehead. I promise. And when I do, this will all be over. Burnett placed a reassuring hand on Daniel's shoulder. Go do what you have to do, son. I'll guard her with my life. Daniel nodded, then tore himself away, each step heavier than the last, as Emma's small figure faded behind him. Back at Miguel's, the team reconvened. Tammy spread out files she'd collected, photos of Branch, old military records, financial trails. Damon added his own notes, including names he suspected from his private digging. Daniel took it all in. We've got motive. We've got structure. Now we need a plan. Miguel looked up. So what's the play, Staff Sergeant? Daniel's eyes burned with resolve. We build intelligence. We watch their moves. And when the time comes, we strike. The garage fell into silence, the weight of the decision pressing over them. Outside, thunder rolled low across the horizon, as if the sky itself knew a storm was coming. Daniel leaned over the map, his voice steady and final. Owen Branch thinks he can prey on families while soldiers bleed overseas. He thinks no one will fight back. He's wrong. We're going to bring the war to him. Chapter 4, Intelligence Gathering. The garage smelled of oil and steel, the air heavy with the hum of a single hanging bulb. Daniel spread fresh documents across the workbench, their corners weighed down with sockets and wrenches. The map of addresses they'd pinned earlier had grown cluttered, a spiderweb of red thread tying names to locations. Damon paced, restless energy radiating off him. We can't just sit here playing detective forever. Every day we wait, kids are suffering. Daniel looked up sharply. And every day we rush and blind, we risk losing them all. You want Ethan back? Then we do this right. Miguel leaned against the tool chest, flipping through a folder Tammy had dropped on the table. His brow furrowed. Fake IDs. Background checks that don't match. These people didn't just pop out of nowhere. They've got a system. Social workers, judges, clerks. Whole lines of paperwork to grease the gears. Tammy leaned in, her hands trembling as she pointed at a stack of photocopies. These are custody petitions. My name's right there. That's how they took my girls. The signatures, none of them are mine. They forged them. Daniel picked up the document, studying the ink. The forged scrawl looked convincing, but the pressure points were all wrong. They've perfected this. Makes it look like the mother signed away her own kids. Damon stopped pacing, his fists clenching. Who the hell signs off on this crap? No judge in his right mind. Unless, Miguel interrupted grimly, the judge isn't on it. The words hung in the air like poison. They needed more than scraps of paper. They needed proof. Daniel, Damon, and Miguel drove out that night, leaving Tammy at the garage to continue sifting through her files. Their target was a county records office rumored to have one of the friendly clerks. The building was quiet, locked up for the night. Daniel picked the side door. Years of breaking into Taliban compounds hadn't left his hands rusty. The tumblers clicked, and they slipped inside, moving under the dim glow of emergency lights. Feels like old times, Damon muttered, his voice tight. Daniel gave him a sharp look. Except the enemy isn't carrying rifles. Keep it tight. They crept through hallways until they found the records room. Miguel knelt at the cabinet, his medic hands steady even in this alien battlefield. He flipped through files, muttering dates and names. Here, he whispered, pulling a folder free. Deployment schedules. Not public records, but someone made copies. Look at this. Dates lined up with custody filings. Daniel scanned the list, his blood running cold. They were watching us. Every time a soldier shipped out, they marked the family. Damon's jaw flexed, and then sent someone like Wayne to play house. Daniel kept digging. Another drawer revealed sealed juvenile records, but with strange annotations. Besides some names, there are numbers, dates, codes. These aren't case notes, Daniel murmured. They're transfers. Rotation schedules. Miguel froze. Like they're moving cargo. No, Damon growled, slamming his fist on the cabinet. Like they're moving our kids. Back in the garage, Tammy laid out what they'd stolen. The paperwork sprawled across the bench like a battlefield. Deployment logs, custody petitions, judge signatures, clerk initials, and tucked in the bottom of one folder, a slim spiral-bound manual. Daniel flipped it open, his throat tightening as he read the title. Behavioral Conditioning for Juvenile Compliance. Tammy leaned forward. What is that? Training material, Daniel said bitterly. Methods to break kids. Written like a field guide. The room fell silent as they skimmed. Each page was worse than the last. Step-by-step instructions. Isolation techniques. Withholding food as discipline. Gaslighting phrases to confuse and degrade. Even suggested games designed to normalize captivity. Miguel slammed the manual shut, his face pale. This isn't just trafficking. This is brainwashing. Tammy's hand shook as she pressed them to her mouth. My babies, they used this on my babies. Damon grabbed the book and hurled it across the garage. It hit the wall with a dull thud. These bastards don't deserve a trial. Daniel's voice was quiet, but it cut through the fury like steel. First, we expose them. Then we take them down. They needed expert confirmation, someone who could help them understand the manual and Emma's trauma. Daniel made the call to Dr. Blake, the child psychologist Emma had been seeing since her rescue. Blake was cautious, but agreed to meet. The next afternoon, they gathered in Blake's office. The walls were lined with children's drawings, bright colors masking the heavy air of grief. Blake adjusted his glasses as he flipped through the manual. Where did you get this? Doesn't matter, Daniel said. What matters is whether it's real. Blake's expression hardened. It's real. Too real. I've seen fragments of this before. Techniques developed in military black sites, repurposed here. But this, he tapped the cover. This is industrialized abuse. Tammy closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. Daniel leaned forward. Can you validate it? If we show this to someone higher up, will they believe it? Yes, Blake said without hesitation. This manual describes deliberate trauma induction, breaking a child's will to ensure compliance. The scars it leaves aren't just physical. They reshape the child's identity, their sense of worth. Emma's symptoms, the withdrawal, the shame, the nightmares, they line up with this exactly. Daniel's chest tightened. He'd seen PTSD in hardened soldiers. Seeing it mapped onto his daughter's pain was unbearable. Blake looked around the room, his tone grave. This isn't just one predator or even one ring. This is systemic. Bribe judges to make rulings vanish. Social workers fabricating evidence. Clerks leaking soldier schedules so families can be targeted when they're weakest. You're looking at an operation designed to prey on children of deployed servicemen and women because the system itself protects them. Miguel swore under his breath. Damon's knuckles went white against his chair. Daniel's voice was low but steady. So you're saying this runs deeper than we thought? Blake met his gaze. Deeper than you're ready for. If you go after them, they won't just fight back, they'll come for Emma. And they'll use the system itself to cover their tracks. Daniel glanced at the manual on Blake's desk, then at the faces of his team. Tammy's grief-hardened resolve. Damon's burning rage. Miguel's cautious loyalty. He knew the truth now. The network wasn't just a predator hiding in the shadows. It was a machine, vast and meticulously designed, with its hands wrapped around the very institution sworn to protect. And Emma, his little girl, was living proof of its cruelty. Daniel's jaw clenched as he rose from his chair. Then we cut the machine apart, piece by piece. The room fell silent, the weight of the revelation settling over them. For the first time, they understood the scale of the enemy. It wasn't just bigger than they'd imagined, it was darker. And they were already in its crosshairs. Chapter 5, The Network Strikes Back. The military medical facility was supposed to be safe. Daniel had fought enough wars to know there was no such thing as perfect security, but Colonel Burnett had assured him this place was sealed tighter than a bunker. Cameras covered every angle, and a private security detail patrolled the halls around the clock. Emma had been placed in a pediatric wing, a small room with cheerful murals of cartoon animals on the walls. She was asleep under thin white sheets, her breathing soft, finally at peace for once. Daniel sat in the chair beside her bed, his combat boots planted on the linoleum floor, his body rigid and alert despite the late hour. Miguel slipped in, holding a clipboard. Vitals are good. She's healing faster than I thought, but the emotional scars, he trailed off, lowering his voice. That's going to take more than stitches and IVs. Daniel nodded, his eyes still locked on his daughter. As long as she has a chance. That's all I need. The facility's hallway was quiet, the hum of fluorescent lights, the only sound. Then Daniel noticed something. The silence felt wrong. The security guard who usually checked the corridor every 15 minutes hadn't walked past. He rose, motioning to Miguel. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. Miguel frowned. What is it? Gut feeling. Daniel grabbed his sidearm from the table. Don't let anyone in unless it's me or Burnett. The ambush came fast. The first sound was glass shattering at the far end of the wing. Then came heavy boots, the metallic click of rifles being racked. Shouts barked orders. Move! Secure the girl. Daniel ducked behind the corner just as bullets shredded the wall where he'd been standing. Drywall dust filled the air. He peeked out. Half a dozen armed men in tactical gear surged down the corridor, weapons raised, moving with military precision. Not random thugs. Trained. Daniel fired 2 quick shots, dropping the lead man. The others scattered, returning fire. The hallway erupted in gunfire, flashes lighting up the sterile white walls. Miguel's voice came over Daniel's earpiece. Panicked. They're here for Emma. I know. Hold the room. Daniel shouted, reloading. From the far end of the hall, reinforcements arrived, Burnett's private security team, clad in dark body armor. They moved like professionals, laying down suppressing fire, pinning the intruders. Push forward, Daniel barked, moving in sync with the detail. He rolled across the corridor, firing controlled bursts, each shot deliberate. Another attacker went down, then another. Still, the attackers pressed hard, determined, as if Emma was worth more than their own lives. One of them shouted over the gunfire, Grab the girl. Don't let Burns stop you. Daniel's blood ran cold. They knew his name. The firefight spilled into the pediatric wing. Daniel kicked open the door to Emma's room, just as one of the masked intruders tried to breach it. Miguel had overturned a bed against the doorway, firing his pistol through the narrow gap. "Daniel, they're coming through," Miguel shouted. Daniel dropped the intruder with a clean headshot, then kicked his body back into the hall. "Not today." Emma stirred in her bed, whimpering. "Daddy." Daniel turned, his voice softening instantly. "Stay down, baby. I'm right here." She nodded, clutching the blanket to her chest. Burnett himself arrived then, flanked by 2 more of his men. His face was grim. "They hit us harder than expected. Somebody fed them intel." Daniel growled. "This was supposed to be a sealed location." "I know," Burnett said, reloading his rifle. "But we'll figure out the leak later. First, we finish this." The gunfight raged for another 15 minutes, but Burnett's team slowly gained the upper hand. 2 intruders surrendered, throwing down their rifles. 3 more lay dead in the hallway. The last one standing tried to retreat. Daniel caught him with a tackle, slamming him against the wall. The mask ripped off in the struggle. Wayne, his face was bruised, eyes wild, but Daniel recognized the sneer. The man who had locked his daughter in a kennel and forced her to eat dog food. Daniel's fists itched to finish it right there. He pressed the barrel of his pistol under Wayne's jaw. "Give me one reason not to end you now." Wayne laughed, a broken, mocking sound. "Because I'm worth more alive than dead. You kill me, you'll never know who's pulling the strings." Daniel's hand trembled with rage, but Burnett stepped in. "He's right. Stand down, Burns. We need him breathing." With a growl, Daniel shoved Wayne into the hands of 2 security officers. They cuffed him and dragged him toward an interrogation room. Emma peeked from her bed, her eyes wide. "Daddy, that's him. That's the bad man." Daniel knelt beside her, brushing her hair back gently. "I know, sweetheart. He'll never touch you again." The interrogation room was stark, just a table, 2 chairs, and a buzzing fluorescent light overhead. Wayne sat cuffed, his mouth twisted in a smirk despite the swelling on his cheek. Daniel leaned across the table, his voice low and dangerous. "Talk. Who sent you?" Wayne chuckled. "You really don't get it, do you? This isn't just about kids. It's bigger. It's leverage. Soldiers like you. So easy to break when we've got your families." Burnett slammed his hand on the table. "Names, Wayne. Who's running you?" Wayne's grin widened. "You already know. He wears a uniform. Same as you." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "What the hell does that mean?" Wayne leaned forward, whispering like a conspirator. "Ask Captain Brent Michael, the family liaison officer assigned to your precious Emma. He's the one who told us when you'd be gone. He's the one who made sure we had everything we needed." The room went dead silent. Burnett's jaw tightened. "That's impossible. Michael's been with the unit for 10 years. Wayne smirked. "And all that time he's been feeding us. Deployment schedules, family vulnerabilities, even which soldiers were worth targeting for outside interests." Daniel's chest tightened, fury boiling over. "If you're lying, I'm not," Wayne said smugly. "Why would I lie when my life depends on being useful?" Burnett stared at Daniel, his face grim. "If this is true, it's not just child exploitation anymore. It's espionage, blackmail, selling out soldiers for profit." Wayne leaned back in his chair, satisfied. "Now you're catching on." Daniel's fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white. The enemy wasn't just predators in the shadows. It was someone inside the very system he trusted, someone who had sold out his daughter's safety for power. And now, the war wasn't just personal. It was national. Chapter 6, The Trap Springs. The night air smelled of rain and diesel, heavy against Daniel's skin as he crouched by the armored van. The map spread before him on the hood was marked with red circles. For locations, for operations happening at once. 2 safe houses in the suburbs, 1 farmhouse north of the city, and the central compound. Burnett tapped each point. "Timing is everything. We hit them simultaneously, or they'll scatter. No stragglers, no leaks." Miguel adjusted his headset. "Each site has kids inside. That means restraint. Minimum lethal unless it's absolutely necessary. Tell that to the bastards, pointing rifles at them." Damon growled, checking the magazine on his rifle. His jaw was locked, his whole body humming with anticipation. For him, this wasn't just a mission. His son's life was on the line. Daniel scanned their faces, Tammy, pale but steady. Miguel, calm but grim. Damon, shaking with a rage that had simmered too long. No matter what happens tonight, we keep the kids safe. That's the mission. Burnett nodded once. Then let's move. The first raid hit just after midnight. Team Alpha, Tammy with 2 of Burnett's men, breached the suburban house on Oak Ridge Lane. The place looked normal on the outside, a cookie-cutter home with trimmed hedges. Inside was hell. 2 armed guards scrambled to respond, but Tammy's shotgun boomed, dropping one instantly. Burnett's men pinned the other against the wall. Tammy rushed past, her voice breaking as she flung open a locked bedroom. "Kids, it's okay, you're safe now." 3 children huddled inside, their eyes wide and hollow. A girl no older than 6 clung to Tammy's arm like she was a lifeline. Tammy's tears streaked through the grime on her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. "We've got you. No one's going to hurt you again." At the farmhouse, Team Bravo moved in fast. Miguel kicked down the cellar door, the stink of mildew and sweat pouring out. The beam of his flashlight caught bars welded into crude cages. "Clear. Kids in here," Miguel shouted. Daniel could hear the small, desperate cries through the comms as Miguel cut the locks. A boy stumbled out, his face gaunt, whispering, "Are you soldiers?" Miguel knelt, his voice breaking. "Yeah, kiddo, and we're here to take you home." The firefight upstairs was short but violent. Burnett's men left 2 predators face down on the farmhouse floor, weapons clattering from their hands. But the real fight was at the compound. The structure loomed like a fortress, floodlights sweeping across the gravel yard, high fencing topped with razor wire. This was the heart of Owen Branch's operation, the place Daniel had been waiting to tear apart. "Eyes up," Daniel whispered into his comm as they approached the perimeter. "We only get one shot at this." Damon was a shadow beside him, his rifle steady, his breath sharp. "Ethan's in there. I can feel it." "Then we're bringing him out," Daniel said firmly. They cut through the fence, slipping into the shadows. A guard tower overlooked the yard, but Damon silenced it with a clean shot through the night scope. The man dropped without a sound. "Go," Daniel ordered. Explosions erupted on the far side of the compound, Burnett's diversion. Alarms blared, guards shouting as they scrambled toward the noise. Daniel's team used the chaos, storming the main building. The inside was worse than Daniel had imagined. Rows of bunks lined the walls, cages tucked into corners. Children, at least a dozen, huddled together, eyes huge, too scared to move. "Clear the kids first," Daniel barked. Miguel and Tammy rushed in, guiding them toward the exit. Gunfire exploded from the stairwell. Daniel and Damon returned fire, bullets sparking off steel beams. The smell of cordite filled the air, the noise deafening in the enclosed space. They pushed forward, step by step, until they reached the upper floor. At the end of the hall stood Owen Branch. The man was broad-shouldered, his hair cut close, his eyes cold and calculating. He wore a tactical vest, but no rifle, just a pistol pressed against the temple of a trembling boy. "Ethan, Damon's son." Daniel froze, raising his hand to stop Damon from charging. "Branch." Branch's lips curled into a sneer. "So this is the famous Sergeant Burns, the doting father." He pressed the gun harder into Ethan's head, making the boy whimper. "You should thank me. I've given your kids what the Army never could: discipline, order, training for the real world. You call cages and starvation training." Daniel's voice was steel, but inside, his rage clawed at the edges of control. Branch's eyes glinted. "Better than leaving them soft. Better than letting them grow up weak. Soldiers like you, your loyalty makes you predictable. That's why we win, because we know exactly where to hurt you." Damon's voice cracked as he stepped forward. "You touch him again, and I swear, stay back." Branch roared, jerking the pistol. Ethan whimpered again, tears streaking his dirt-stained cheeks. Daniel's eyes locked on the boy, then on Branch's stance. He was overconfident, his weight on the wrong foot, his finger too tight on the trigger. "You're not a soldier anymore," Daniel said quietly. "You're just a coward hiding behind kids." Branch snarled. "And yet I'm the one holding all the power." Daniel took one slow step forward. "No, you lost the moment you underestimated me." Branch's sneer faltered for half a second. "Enough." Daniel moved like lightning, his pistol snapping up. One shot. Clean, precise. Branch staggered, a hole blooming red in the center of his forehead. His gun clattered from his hand as he collapsed. Ethan broke free, running straight into Damon's arms. Damon dropped his rifle, clutching his son with a sob that tore through the chaos. Ethan, oh God, Ethan. I've got you. I've got you, buddy. Daniel exhaled slowly, lowering his weapon. His heart still hammered, but his aim had been true. The boy was safe. The compound was secured within the hour. Guards were disarmed, children evacuated, evidence collected. In a locked office, they found what Daniel had been searching for. A fireproof cabinet stuffed with files. Names, addresses, deployment dates. More than 200 families marked for targeting. Miguel flipped through the files, his face grim. This is it. Proof of the whole network. Enough to burn every last one of them. Tammy stood beside him, her voice shaking. 200 families, all those kids. Daniel closed the cabinet with a hard shove. Then we make sure not one more child suffers at their hands. In the corner, Damon rocked Ethan, whispering promises through his tears. The boy clung to him, silent but alive. For Daniel, the mission was far from over. But tonight, at least, they had struck back. And Owen Branch, the monster who had justified cruelty as discipline, would never hurt another child again. Chapter 7. Unraveling the Web. The compound still smelled of smoke and gunpowder when Daniel stepped into the makeshift command post. A folding table was buried under files, flash drives, and confiscated hard drives. Burnett's men moved like ants, tagging and logging every piece of evidence. But even surrounded by chaos, Daniel's focus was sharp. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot. Wayne sat shackled in a reinforced interrogation room, 2 floors down, pale and bruised, but still carrying that mocking grin. They'd already broken open Owen Branch's fortress, but Wayne was the piece that tied everything together, the mouth that wouldn't stop running if pressed the right way. Daniel pushed through the door, Damon shadowing close behind. Wayne smirked. Back again, Burns? Didn't get enough fireworks last night. Daniel sat across from him, eyes steady. You're finished, Wayne. Branch is dead. The compound's gone. All we need from you now are the names. Wayne leaned back, his cuffs rattling against the metal table. Names? You think it was just us? A couple of bad apples. He chuckled darkly. You've barely scratched the surface. Judges, contractors, defense officials, all of them dipping their hands in the same jar. You can't win against the system itself. Damon leaned forward, fury in his voice. Try me. Give me one name. Wayne's eyes flicked to him, lips curling. You're the father, aren't you? The one whose boy was in Branch's special wing. Tell me, how did it feel? Knowing your son learned to fear you were never coming back. Damon lunged, but Daniel caught his arm mid-swing. Not like this, he growled. Daniel turned back to Wayne. Keep talking. Every word you say digs the grave deeper for the people protecting you. Wayne's grin faltered. For the first time, a flicker of unease crossed his face. By morning, the evidence they'd seized had been turned over to federal agents. FBI trucks pulled into the compound yard, agents fanning out, armed with warrants and heavy cases. Special Agent Nora Callahan strode into the command post, sharp-eyed and uncompromising. Colonel Burnett. Sergeant Burns, I've reviewed what you sent. If half of it checks out, this isn't just a trafficking ring, it's organized espionage. Your families weren't just targets. They were leverage against national security. Daniel crossed his arms. We already figured that much. Callahan nodded. But what you didn't know, Wayne was right. Judges signed off fraudulent custody transfers. Contractors funneled money. A few Pentagon clerks leaked schedules. We've got a web that stretches across at least 6 states. Burnett exhaled. And if it stretches that far, it stretches farther, Callahan finished grimly. We've already got teams raiding properties in Texas, Virginia, and California. Dozens of kids have been found in just the last 12 hours. Daniel's chest tightened at her words. Relief, anger, and grim satisfaction collided all at once. The nightmare was bigger than he'd imagined, but so was the chance to end it. Meanwhile, Miguel took Emma to her therapy session with Dr. Blake. The little girl walked into the office holding her father's old army coin, gripping it like a talisman. Blake crouched to her level. "Emma, are you ready to talk today?" She nodded shyly. They sat across from one another, crayons scattered across the table. Emma began drawing, first a cage, dark lines heavy on the paper. Then, slowly, she added a door. "An open one. Tell me about this," Blake encouraged gently. Emma's small voice trembled. "That's where they put me." But Daddy opened the door. He said I'm safe now. Miguel watched from the corner, his throat tightening. Blake smiled warmly. "And are you safe now?" Emma nodded, her eyes bright. "Yes. And maybe I could tell the other kids too. The ones who are still scared." That afternoon, Daniel walked into a secured FBI debriefing. Screens glowed with spreadsheets of names and accounts. Photos of handshakes and fund transfers flashed on the monitors. Judges taking bribes, contractors funneling cash. Callahan pointed at the evidence. This wasn't just about abuse. This was about control. Threatening soldiers with their children so they'd hand over intel. Selling those secrets to foreign bidders. One agent added, "Some of the contractors have ties overseas. This is national security sabotage on top of human exploitation." Daniel clenched his jaw. And to think it all started with one bastard locking my daughter in a kennel. Burnett's voice rumbled low. "It started long before that. But tonight, we ripped the rot out by the roots." Over the next weeks, the dominoes fell. In Texas, 20 children were freed from a foster care facility that turned out to be a front. In Virginia, 2 judges were arrested mid-session, dragged out of their courtrooms in handcuffs. In California, a contractor was caught shredding files just as agents stormed his office. News headlines exploded. Military family exploitation, ring busted. Federal judges indicted in child trafficking scandal. National security breach linked to predatory network. For Daniel, the war had shifted. It wasn't about one predator anymore. It was about a system that had betrayed its own. Back at the safe house, Emma sat at a table with some of the other rescued children. She spoke softly, but every kid around her leaned in to listen. "I was scared too," Emma told them, her little hands folded in her lap. "But my daddy came back. He said the bad men can't hurt us anymore." And he was right. A boy with hollow eyes whispered, "But what if they come again?" Emma shook her head, clutching her coin. "Then we fight back. We're not alone." Miguel watched from the doorway, whispering to Daniel, "She's becoming the anchor." The others look at her and believe it can get better. Daniel's chest swelled with pride and sorrow all at once. His daughter, his fragile, scarred little girl, was already stronger than most adults he'd known. One evening, Daniel returned to the command center. Callahan spread a new map across the table, dozens of pins marking freed children across the country. "We've confirmed at least 67 rescues so far," she reported. The number's still climbing. And every one of them has stories that match Emma's. Broken families, staged custody losses, deliberate abuse. It's systemic, Sergeant. Bigger than any of us thought. Daniel stared at the map, his fists curling. "Then we don't stop until every last one of them is safe." Burnett's gravelly voice cut in. "This isn't just personal anymore, Burns. It's reform. This is about fixing a system that was built to fail the people it swore to protect." Daniel didn't answer at first. His mind was with Emma, drawing open doors, telling frightened children they weren't alone. He finally spoke, voice low and resolute. "Then let's burn the whole rotten web to the ground." The room fell silent, the weight of it pressing on them. For the first time, it wasn't just about revenge or rescue. It was about something bigger. Change. Chapter 8, Justice Served. The courthouse loomed like a fortress. Marble pillars stretched into the sky, sunlight flashing against the glass doors as though even the building itself wanted to blind out the filth about to be dragged into its chambers. Daniel stood at the steps, his daughter's small hand clutching his. Emma wore a light blue dress that Miguel had bought for her weeks earlier, soft fabric that didn't scratch her healing skin. She still carried his Army Challenge coin, turning it nervously in her palm. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Daniel asked gently, crouching to her level. Emma nodded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her lip. "They need to hear me, Daddy. If I can tell the other kids they're not alone, then maybe the bad men won't win anymore." Daniel's chest tightened. His 7-year-old had already seen more than most adults ever would, and yet here she was, braver than he could have imagined. "All right," he whispered, kissing her forehead. "But remember, you don't have to carry this alone. I'm right here." Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Rows of journalists filled the benches, cameras forbidden, but pens scratching furiously. Families of rescued children sat scattered through the gallery, their faces taut with anticipation and pain. At the front, Wayne sat shackled between two marshals. His smirk was gone now, replaced by a hollow defiance. Captain Brent Michael slouched in the second row of defendants, his uniform stripped, his face gaunt. Beside him, Judge Hector Fernandez, once a man of authority, now looked small in his orange jumpsuit. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs. "All rise." Judge Harris entered, black robe flowing, eyes scanning the courtroom like steel. "This court will come to order." The prosecution opened with fire. Assistant U.S. Attorney Linda Carver stood tall, her voice sharp enough to slice through stone. "These defendants," she began, pointing toward Wayne and the others, "betrayed not just their communities, but the very system meant to protect the most vulnerable. They preyed on the children of deployed soldiers, children already carrying the burden of absence and sacrifice. They manipulated, they abused, they traded lives like currency. Today, that ends." Daniel squeezed Emma's hand as Carver continued, outlining the evidence. Seized files, forged custody papers, intercepted bank transfers. Each word landed like a hammer. When the defense tried to push back, their arguments collapsed under the weight of facts. One lawyer muttered about circumstantial ties. Carver coolly pulled out a signed document authorizing a false foster transfer. Another tried to claim lack of knowledge. Carver projected an email chain with timestamps and bank account numbers. And then came the testimonies. Damon Freeman was first. He stood, his voice shaking but resolute. "They took my boy. For months, I didn't know if he was alive. Do you understand what that does to a father? To bury your own hope every single day, praying for a knock on the door that never comes." He glared directly at Wayne. "And you did it for profit. You thought we wouldn't fight back. You were wrong." Wayne shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Next came Tammy Courtney. She clutched a photo of her 2 daughters, her voice breaking as she described how Judge Fernandez had signed away her custody rights with forged evidence. "You destroyed my family for a paycheck, and you call yourself a judge? You were supposed to protect us." The room crackled with fury. When it was Daniel's turn, the silence was absolute. He stepped up to the witness stand, his uniform crisp, medals pinned across his chest. "My name is Staff Sergeant Daniel Burns," he began. "I've served 15 years in the U.S. Army. I've fought overseas, faced enemies with rifles in their hands. But nothing compared to coming home and finding my daughter locked in a kennel, starved, and told she was less than human." He pointed toward Wayne, voice like a blade. "You thought I wouldn't find out. You thought you could hide behind judges, contractors, and corrupt officers. But you forgot one thing. Soldiers fight until the war is over. And this war is over for you." The jury hung on his every word. Wayne kept his eyes down, unable to meet the glare. Finally, it was Emma's turn. Daniel's heart pounded as she was sworn in. The microphone adjusted to her tiny height. She looked small standing there, but when she spoke, her voice carried through the room. "They told me I had to stay in the cage. They said I was bad and that no one would come for me." Her hands shook, but she held up the coin Daniel had given her. "But Daddy came. He said I was worth saving. And I believe him. I think other kids need to hear that too." A hush fell over the courtroom. Journalists stopped writing. Even Judge Harris leaned forward, eyes softening. Emma took a deep breath. "I don't want any kid to feel like I did. Scared. Alone. I want them to know they're safe now." Daniel's vision blurred with tears. He wasn't the only one. Half the gallery wept silently. The verdicts came swift and unforgiving. Wayne, guilty on all counts, child endangerment, trafficking, conspiracy, espionage. Sentenced to life without parole. He slumped in his chair, face pale as the words sealed his fate. Captain Brent Michael, 30 years federal prison. His betrayal of duty cut deepest, and the sentence reflected it. Judge Fernandez, 25 years for corruption, bribery, and conspiracy. The contractors? Fines, asset seizures, and decades behind bars. Fortunes crumbled overnight. Empires of greed reduced to dust. 67 children freed. 43 perpetrators sentenced. Justice wasn't just served, it was carved into stone. Outside the courthouse, cameras finally clicked. Reporters swarmed, questions flying. But Emma held her father's hand tightly, stepping onto the podium with the quiet courage that had carried her this far. She faced the crowd, her voice steady despite the flashbulbs. I was scared once. I thought no one cared. But my daddy came back for me. And now I want to help other kids who feel the same. If you're scared, don't give up. Someone will come for you. You're not alone. The crowd erupted with emotion. Some clapped. Others wept. And in that moment, Emma became more than a survivor. She became a beacon. Daniel pulled her into his arms, whispering into her hair, "You did it, sweetheart. You gave them hope." She smiled up at him, eyes glistening. "And you kept your promise, Daddy. I'm safe now. Forever." Daniel's throat tightened. For the first time since returning home, he felt the war truly end, not with gunfire or vengeance, but with his daughter's words. And he knew, no matter how broken the world was, Emma would never have to face it alone again. Chapter 9, New Beginnings. 2 years had changed everything, though some scars remained quietly beneath the surface. Daniel Burns stood in the bright, open office of the Military Family Protection Service, the organization he had founded from the ashes of the past. The walls were lined with maps, whiteboards, and photographs. Deployed families, rescued children, and operational plans ready to be executed at a moment's notice. Miguel leaned against the desk, sipping a cup of coffee. "Can you believe it, Dan? 2 years, and we've gone from a one-man mission to a full-blown nationwide protection unit." Daniel smiled, running a hand over his closely cropped hair. "I can believe it. We finally have the tools to stop what happened to Emma from happening to anyone else." Tammy Courtney walked past, reviewing a list of at-risk families. "Our early intervention program alone has prevented 3 attempted abductions this year. It's real, Dan. We're making a difference." Damon Freeman entered, Ethan running at his heels, laughing as if the darkness of the past had been completely washed away. "Look at him," Damon said, kneeling to scoop up his son. Not a trace of the fear he carried before. "You made that happen, Burns. We all did." Daniel's gaze drifted across the office and landed on Emma, who stood at the edge of the room, her small hands clutching a stack of papers. She was 9 now, taller, confident, with a spark in her eyes that had once been dulled by fear. "Daddy," she called, running across the office. "Look what I made for today's advocacy meeting." Daniel caught her in a quick hug, inhaling the scent of her hair and the determination in her voice. "I can't wait to see it, Pumpkin." "What is it?" Emma spread the papers across the table, colorful drawings depicting children in safe homes, officers helping families, and even a cartoon of Daniel in uniform, standing guard. She grinned. "This is for my talk at Congress. I'm going to show them how families like ours need protection, and I want everyone to know they can be safe." Daniel knelt beside her. "You're going to inspire so many people, Emma, just like you've inspired me every single day." Miguel chuckled. "And don't forget, she's got the toughest lobbyist on her side. You set the bar high, Sergeant." Daniel smirked. "Yeah, tough negotiator with a mean glare." He ruffled her hair. "All right, Princess, let's make sure you're ready for your big moment." The following week, Daniel watched from the sidelines as Emma stepped onto the congressional podium. Reporters and officials filled the chamber, cameras flashing. The young girl adjusted the microphone, her voice clear and unwavering. "Good morning," she began, her gaze sweeping the room. "I'm Emma Burns, and I'm 9 years old. 2 years ago, I was scared and alone. But thanks to my daddy, his friends, and people who believed in protecting families, I'm safe now. And I want every other child to be safe too." Daniel's chest swelled with pride. He remembered her tiny voice trembling in the therapy office, the tears she had shed in the kennel, and the fear that had once consumed her. Now, she was standing tall, telling her story to lawmakers demanding change. She continued, showing her drawings, pointing to each home and smiling child. This is what we can do when we protect families. Kids like me can grow up without fear, and we can prevent the bad men from hurting anyone ever again. A murmur of admiration ran through the chamber. Lawmakers nodded, some openly wiping tears. Daniel's eyes found Miguel and Damon in the gallery. Both men stood, fists pressed to their chests, moved by the little girl who had become a symbol of resilience. When Emma concluded, she stepped down, racing into Daniel's arms. "Did you see? Did they listen?" she asked, her voice trembling with excitement and nerves. Daniel hugged her tightly. Every word, Pumpkin. Every single word. Back at the MFPS headquarters, work never stopped. Calls from families, intelligence on potential threats, and training exercises filled the day. Yet Daniel always found time to check on Emma, to teach her, and to let her understand that while the past could not be erased, the future could be defended. One afternoon, as Emma sat coloring, Daniel came over with a small envelope. "What's this?" she asked, opening it carefully. Inside was a sheet of paper with her own drawing, scribbled crayon lines depicting her and Daniel standing in a sunny field, smiling, the words "forever safe" written across the top. Emma looked up at him, eyes shining. "I made this on my birthday today, Daddy. For you. Because you always kept your promise." Daniel knelt beside her, swallowing hard. "You've always been my promise, Emma. And seeing you happy, this is all I ever wanted." Tammy, watching nearby, whispered to Miguel, "Look at her. She's healing, really healing. That drawing, it's not just art, it's freedom." Miguel nodded. "Yeah, and the man holding her hand, that's the reason she's safe." Weeks later, a formal ceremony honored the work of MFPS. Families stood with children holding balloons, journalists filed stories, and military officials attended, nodding in recognition. Emma took the stage once more, her voice clear, resonant, and mature beyond her years. "I want to thank my daddy," she said, stepping forward. Her eyes met Daniel's, unwavering. "He promised that the bad man would never hurt me again. And he kept his promise. Not just for me, but for every other kid who felt scared. He didn't just save me, he saved all of us." Daniel's throat tightened. He couldn't speak at first. All he could do was nod, tears pricking the corners of his eyes. Around him, other parents wiped tears from their faces, watching the little girl who had once been terrified now stand as a pillar of hope. Callahan, who had flown in for the ceremony, leaned over to whisper to Daniel, "That girl, she's going to change the world. And you made that possible." Daniel exhaled, a mix of pride, exhaustion, and relief washing over him. "I just kept my promise, Nora. That's all." Later, in a quieter moment, Daniel took Emma aside. They walked to a small garden behind the MFPS headquarters. Birds chirped, the scent of flowers filling the air, a stark contrast to the chaos they had endured. Emma held her drawing, pointing to the sunny field and smiling stick figures. "I want to make sure every kid has a place like this, Daddy. A safe place." Daniel smiled, resting a hand on her shoulder. "And you will, Emma. We'll make sure of it. Every single day." She leaned into him. "Promise." Daniel chuckled softly. "Promise." For the first time since returning from deployment, he truly believed the word meant more than an oath. It was a covenant he would honor for the rest of his life. Above them, the sun broke through clouds, casting golden light across the garden. It felt like a new beginning, not just for Daniel and Emma, but for every family the MFPS could protect, every child who would never again know the fear she once endured. And as Emma raised her head, smiling up at him, Daniel silently vowed, no matter what threats arose, the bad men would never touch her or any other child again. The past was behind them, the scars visible but softened by love, protection, and justice. The future lay open, bright, and full of promise.